All right, thank you everybody for coming tonight. And this is our third steering committee meeting. You haven't seen my face yet, so I want to introduce myself. I'm Jonathan Corona. I'm a consultant with Jacobs Engineering as well, working closely with Tim. Some of them. He's actually on the call. He just couldn't be here in person in Florida. So Tim, do you want to say hey? Not sure if you're trying to talk to him, but we can't hear you. Okay, he may have stepped away, but he will be available tonight, as well as our colleague Jonathan Bartlett, JB, also with Jacobs, and we're also accompanied tonight by Andrew Jones with Blue Cypress. So y'all met her before. All right, so we've already done, as you guys were walking in, we had the character area input activity, and we're going to use that as a part. We wanted to see if you all had any major concerns, if there's any common concerns among this group that we need to address tonight. So one of them that I already noted was the Livable Road neighborhoods character area number 12. So we'll talk about that along with some other ones that have come up as common themes. So we'll get to that later on in this meeting, but we also wanted to give an update on the project schedule. Andrew will be giving a public engagement update, and we'll be giving a brief overview of the real estate analysis that our team started for this study as well. So that will feed into some discussion about land use, which is why we did this character area map activity. So we'll engage in a lot more discussion throughout this. So as formal as this setting is, of course, please feel free to ask me questions throughout this meeting. If there's any clarification you might need, I am open to that. So so after that, I'll give a brief transportation update. I know that was touched on heavily last time we talked, and a lot of that is underway. So we'll talk a little bit about that before talking about next steps. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions about our agenda or anything that you've received over the last few days? Then Somerville, he's back. So Jim, if you want to say hey really quick, we'll get started.
Yeah, sorry I missed that. I was doing multitasking here. But no, yeah, I'm sorry we couldn't be there today, but you're in good hands with Jonathan. For several of you may know Jonathan from past efforts. He actually helped me with the last comp plan update and been a part of our team for a number of years. So you're in good hands. I mean, if you have any questions or anything that I can help in the discussion, please let me know. But I am watching the meeting and glad to participate any way I can.
Thanks, Jim, and feel free to chime in.
Sure.
Quick.
I'm sorry, you said received over the last couple of days. Did something go out?
Just the handout that you have in front of you. So that. Okay. Well, feel free to flip through it while we're talking today. The handout that you have in front of you is from the previous comprehensive plan. These are the character areas that were previously adopted. So these will be good reference for our conversation later on. So feel free to flip through that while we're talking and reference that when we have that conversation about this later on. And you also got the agenda, and I think that was it.
Yeah, I apologize about that. I think my email for some reason has been going to some people's spam folders, so that happened to a few of you. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Let us know when y'all get home, maybe later or tomorrow morning. Shoot us an email. Let us know if you're not getting on. Sure, if you're getting on. But thank you for coming tonight. You got something. Great. So just as a quick update on the project schedule. We are about midway through this process, and right now we're sort of transitioning from the visioning phase of both of the planning processes, including the comprehensive plan and the LCI study. We're kind of transitioning into more implementation, looking at how the recommendations that come out of this plan get implemented into both of those work programs. So for tonight, we'll be more focused on a discussion about development, why we're talking about land use, and that will really feed into both the comprehensive plan and the LCI study. So the next time we meet, we'll focus a little bit more on that community work program, which is the guiding document that will help city council, help city staff to start to really implement some of the vision that has been established. Same for the LCI, that work program as well. So right now, I'm gonna hand it over to Ainsley briefly to give an overview of the public engagement we've received over the past couple months. We received an update last time, I believe, but this will be quickly some new information and so, yeah.
Hey, everyone.
Can we do quick introductions? I think I know everyone, almost everyone, but we don't know 50.
Go around the horn, that'd be great. You want to start?
Sure, yeah, I'm William Corbett, Economic Development Director here at City. Tony Harris, Community Development Director here at City Norcross.
Will Newton, Business Development Manager for the City of Norcross.
Kevin Hill, General Manager.
Marlene Jana.
Ellen and the chair of the Northwest. Healthy humans.
Jones with Neighborhood Development.
Bob Grossman, board member on the Norcross Public Arts Commission.
Josh Bear, Board Member on the City Council. Ralph White, 45 South.
Maria Wade, Owen and the Soap Salon.
Jim Meyer, Norcross resident.
I'm Marshall Cheek, I'm with the Planning and Zoning Board.
And I'm Louis Fernandez. I'm a business owner, Vito's and the Cross downtown.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm Ainsley Jones, and I'm with Blue Cypress Consulting, working very closely with Jacob's team on this project and carrying out the public engagement activities. So here to update you tonight on what we've done since our last meeting back in May. We've had 2 pop-ups since then. On June 24th, we were at the Blues Fairy Music Festival. And then on, July 29th, just last weekend, the Cookout with Council. So these were 2 great events where we were able to interact with community members, be out in the community where events were occurring. So we just catch people and get their participation through input boards and through a visioning survey that I'm gonna update you all on in a few minutes. But through our input boards, which a few of them are actually here, so I can show you the actual comments directly from the public. But some of the major themes that came out of that were a lot of comments about connectivity around the city, being able to access places by walking, by bike. Those are really popular needs. Parking has come up again and again throughout this process. So we've been asking folks, especially on the visioning survey, what would that look like in the town center? Is it a paid parking garage? When we get into transportation discussion, I'm sure we'll go through some more of that, what could be considered. Some other ideas that came forward were beautification needs, especially to make Jimmy Carter more of a gateway into Norcross. And then again, safety on our major corridors and enforcing speed limits and making sure that people traveling via different modes get around safely. There we go. All right, so our visioning survey that I just alluded to, we had this open from April 8th through July 7th. When we closed it, we ended with 409 participants. For the most part, this was on our English survey. We did get 6 responses on the Spanish version as well. Just to give you more demographics on, who we heard from, we've got the age breakouts here showing who the most popular age groups were that participated. Income, we tended to hear from those on the higher income spectrum, and then majority white participants. We asked about transportation needs, particularly in the town center. The most popular answer was that vehicular congestion is a big issue that needs to be addressed. And then, as I've kind of talked about already, pedestrian crossings, parking, and railroad crossings were really common answers that we heard. Regarding paid parking in the town center wasn't super popular, as you might expect. So over half participants said they don't support paid parking. Electric vehicles, as you remember, that's one of the focuses of the town center study, so we asked some questions about that. We asked about if you don't own an electric vehicle, what do you consider barriers to owning one or driving an electric vehicle? Almost half of the participants said that they're too expensive. But it was notable that about 44% of folks said that the lack of charging stations in the city would be another reason they wouldn't want to get an electric vehicle. This was also good to see that 87% of folks do support the city in pursuing federal funding to expand the electric vehicle chargers from us. All right, for future development, which is going to be a key focus that we'll go into tonight, we asked about preferences for various things, as you see, as listed as different priorities. And the top answers that we got to the question of what are your top priorities for future growth and development around the city are more unique shops and restaurants, more outdoor gathering spaces, and more parks. We'll mention that we had a question about workforce housing. 43% of respondents support enabling more workforce housing through our land use policies. All right, and then the next over the next month or 2 months, we've got some exciting.
Is there a definition of workforce housing in the
Yes,
survey?
yes, there was.
And what was it?
It was that it's housing that meets 30% of your income is what the median income in Norcross. Sorry, I did explain that well, but I can look back at exactly how it was phrased in the survey, but essentially it's to make sure that community members have housing options that can be attainable if at 30% of what their income is.
So essentially for 100% of AMI, which is the area median income, that the rent or lease would only be 30% of that.
Yes, thank you.
So what's that mean in real numbers, and how does that translate to? I mean, I know that the average household income is 72,000 in Norcross. What's the AMI that you're 30%?
Yeah, let me get back to you on that. I need to look. I don't have it on the top of my head right now, but I can get you what we referenced in the.
Because that also then trickles down the rent rates, rental rates, and mortgage payments.
Absolutely. All right, so we're really excited about some upcoming engagement events that we have planned. August 22nd, we're going to do a little pop-up at the summer hour, our middle school's curriculum night. So this is one of our efforts to try to hear more from the Hispanic community. But we also just think it'll be a great opportunity to get the word out about some of our future engagements. We're going to have a survey going out around that same time, so it's going to help us start getting some participation on that next survey. And then we'll promote these 2 meetings as well. Sorry,
What's the difference between the survey?
so this next survey that's going to go out is more focused on feedback on our land use and transportation ideas that are going to be going into kind of some of what we're talking about tonight about what changes you might see on the future development map and what transportation projects we might consider moving forward through the LCI. So we want to present those in a user-friendly way around a map. It's actually going to be a project on a map that people can click on or read a little description, and they can like it or they can provide a comment of support or not supporting it.
And what are the responses and actually start making that actionable? Yeah.
So that's really a key focus of this meeting is we're gonna be discussing, you know, what are the implications of that survey for the future land use map? Future development map.
So yeah, definitely keep in mind for the rest of the evening, the things you just heard. You can always skip back to some of these slides if you want to see it again. But it will definitely be a big part of our discussion tonight, and we will be taking a lot of this input, obviously with a grain of salt, because as you saw, our sampling is limited. That's why we want to make sure, and we use you all to push out the work with the rest of the public engagement that we have. So we'll be sending out communications for this stuff. So and getting people in your social involved is really important.
Anyone else? Let me know if y'all have questions about the engagement.
Thank you, Ainsley. So yeah, that public engagement is absolutely important, but like I said, we want to make sure that we're taking into account data, and which is why we're presenting you tonight with key takeaways from our real estate analysis. And I want to preface this conversation by reminding this group of your role in that, you know, as a steering committee, we want to make sure that you all are acting as a sounding board. This will be the first time, you know, we're kind of presenting this information, and it's in flux. This is, you know, depending on, you know, what story we see from this data and what conversation we have tonight, we can kind of look back at the story that this real estate analysis tells. So also be mindful that some of the stuff we're going through tonight, since it's key takeaways, it's going to be more on the challenges side than it is the happy stuff. So there absolutely are things to be proud about in the city of Norcross. But some of the things we'll touch on are more disadvantages and challenges that we kind of want to address this process as well. So I'll get started here, starting with the population forecast. The reason we pulled this up, and we all know that the economy is growing, and over the next few decades, by 2050, Gwinnett County will see an increased population of over 1.4 million people. So that, as you can see on this map or on this chart, other counties and other communities are also growing. So with Norcross's strategic location in the Metro Atlanta area, we can already feel the impacts of that growth. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Norcross from a population standpoint as well as employment. So we bring up the employment forecast as well. Between now and 2050, we're also seeing a large increase across the similar counties. So not just Gwinnett, we're looking at Fulton and DeKalb with these big jumps in employment, where people from Norcross might end up working as well. Some of you may work in these communities. We see in our data that a lot of people in Norcross work outside of the city. We'll visit that in a moment as well. But with this happening, we also see another challenge with those job opportunities elsewhere outside of the Norcross area. You know, that's going to bring more people on the roads. People are going to go to those jobs outside as well. So I'm saying that because that is with this data, business as usual. So we want to have a conversation tonight about how Norcross can combat this, bring desired jobs to the city, bring desired housing to the city that's going to support the vision that you all and the rest. So this data is very business as usual. Things are happening now, forecast projections. So with what I just said, we see the employment and industry sector here on the right. We have the top 10 industries and for jobs in Norcross, and a lot of them, if you read down this list, aren't the highest paying jobs of the job market in the whole Atlanta region. And on the map on the left, we see that a lot of residents from the city of Norcross are leaving. So about a third of the city is commuting outside of Norcross to go to work, presumably to those cities. And I say presumably because we have a map of where they're going. I'll show you that as well. And then we have over 20,000 commuters from around the metro area coming here. And that is also to be presumed because a lot of them can't afford to live here. Some people, like my wife and I, work in different areas, so we live somewhere in the middle. That's also the case too. But with that big of a number, a large amount of them, can't afford to live here based on the top 10 industries in Norcross. So when we look at median household income, you mentioned earlier, Norcross is looking at over $70,000 per year for median household income, which is high, and that's creeping over what Norcross's median household income is now, which is great. And when we look at the map to the right, those, a lot of those high paying jobs are going to be in areas like Buckhead, Alpharetta, tech centers and those employment hubs around the metro Atlanta region. So, those people can, I'm saying those people, you know what I mean? The people who are, working the jobs typically are going to have those higher incomes and can afford to live in the city.
What's accounting for, I mean, it's somewhat surprising, actually, to see the median income Norcross. I mean, and what's accounting for that jump from 58, 2015 to 70? I mean, that's one of the largest jump of all time.
It is a major jump, and William, I want to pick it up. You speak to that.
I think that, I was thinking about this the other day too, and, I think it's a combination, of, what happened with the pandemic, a lot of people did move, I think, and you see a lot of the newer residents are in a lot of these newer, developments, which are not, the majority of them are probably not as affordable, as some of the older ones may have been. And so you get a new influx of residents, so I think that does really affect, because remember, we only have about 6,000 households. So it can affect pretty significantly. So a lot of the work that we've done with, helping to encourage new development, I think has contributed to that. Now, I think that could be seen as a positive in terms of recruitment of certain areas like retail, for example, but yeah, that is interesting.
And given our lack of workforce housing and affordable housing, we are at capacity in our apartment complexes and our less expensive rental home market in the city of Norcross. So that number is not going up, whereas new developments, Broadstone, the Junction, things like that. To his point, that's where people can go to, and the only people who go to are afford to go to. Well, so it makes a significant increase.
But using the 30% of AMI, that's $1,800 a month available for housing. You can rent a number of apartments in Brunswick and Broadstone for $1,800 a month, and which puts you under the 30% AMI. So, I think we need to look realistically at what our AMI is generating from a monthly housing availability. And I'm not saying we don't have enough, but I'm just saying that, it's to use the lesser apartments as the only place for workforce housing doesn't fit within the definition that you've described for workforce housing.
No,
It can be expanded, I guess is what I'm saying.
that's a good point, Jim. But I guess we also consider families that are making in that income range that need bigger spaces to live. So
I'm struggling with the, with the slide go back, because it's like we're immediately jumping to the assumption that just because somebody drives into town means they can't afford to live here. And I've had multiple jobs that were outside of Norcross, and I didn't move there because I just like living in Norcross. And it had nothing to do with whether or not I could afford the job. I drove to Canton for a while.
I see what you're saying. But the reason we point to that is because of the top industries where, these are not the industries that are getting those jobs. People, those higher paying jobs, people have to come to town. That we make that assumption, with that in mind as well.
But I mean, unless we have data showing what these jobs pay, I don't think that we should just assume that because somebody's in manufacturing, they're not making that much money. I mean, maybe you guys have looked at the data, but.
No, that's a good point.
So the other way to look at this, and to point out is, I work in the city of Norcross, and I live in the city of Norcross, but I work for Kaiser Permanente, and my employers have open California. I'm making over 70 significantly. So I'm adding to this number AMI. you know what I mean? But my employer is not Norcross. You know, even though I'm staying here and I'm working here and I'm living here, I don't have a Norcross-based employer, but if you look at the companies that are based here, many of those are providing employment opportunities that are not paying at 100% of the amount.
Let me speak to, I own a business in Norcross and live in Norcross. I'm the only one in my company that lives in Norcross.
Yeah.
We used to have people live wherever they want to live, and they used to come to town, come to Norcross and eat at the crossing, eat mojitos and everywhere else.
Mhm.
I'm not sure it's such a bad thing.
I would, if I could, add, I don't know how much this factors into it, but coming out of COVID, especially in 2021, there was such a shortage of employment. And I know, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but wages have gone up. So we ended up, and I only have like my finger in the pulse in the restaurant business, but everyone in our restaurants, it was, okay, you want to wash dishes? They're not washing dishes for $12, $13, $14 an hour. So it is what it is. And I do have to say wages did go up. Even if it's just a service oriented, all of our people, over 100 employees, but everybody, it was just the only way. It's what it is. So I don't know how much that factors in the fact that, there was a big increase, but a little bit of that going on.
Sure. And these are all valid points, but in a moment here, we'll visit four of the major asset classes in Norcross and talk about, how those are trending from a real estate analysis standpoint. But that is a valid point, Marshall. We'll get to some of that in a moment as well. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna keep going, but we can continue talking about this. So when we going back to home values, we pulled the median home values for Norcross and adjacent communities as well as Gwinnett. And we see that those home values that surpass those Gwinnett County and nearby Duluth. So with affordability continuing to be an issue, assuming that those workforce numbers that we've been talking about tonight, Norcross really depends on people who can't afford to live here to come into town to work. So if this is based on that market data, some of you might disagree, and that might not be the case for some people, but this is an assumption that that is across the board the case across the American cities.
Here, it doesn't show 2023, but currently when it counting the average home price is 400,000.
In 2023, you said, yeah, and we don't have the census data. So if you have that from Norcross too, I'd like for you to send it to us, but that would be helpful. This is what was available to us. Back to Kathleen's point earlier, talking about renter occupied units. The Norcross right now is about half and half of those. So over the next 5 years, we only see an increase of a little over 100 of those units. And this again is business as usual growth. The growth that actually happens is going to be a matter of the land use policies that are going to be put in place as a result of the comprehensive plan. So it's a question again of what type of units do we want to see. And we saw earlier in the public engagement that slides that Angie presented earlier. A lot of people said they want to continue seeing homes and single family homes and small lot single family homes. So right now we can take a pause really quick. Is that an accurate reflection of the community's wants? It seems to be the case. People want yards. People want a garage, and some people just want less apartments around. Is that how you all feel, or is there?
I think it's,
Go ahead.
I think it's ideal to want a state, but realistically, the single family homes that are being built are $500,000. So you can say you want that, but I think there's a difference between what you want and what will come. It's like that.
But also during the pandemic, we had over 800 housing units come online that were multifamily or townhomes, and they were all filled within 18 months. So, yeah, they can say they want single family, but the market suggests that there's a pretty strong demand, and this was during the height of COVID.
Mhm.
Suggests there's a pretty strong demand for multi, whether it's, a townhouse or a true multifamily, based on what we're seeing in the last couple of years.
Yes, sir.
There's a strong demand for just housing in general. If people take the big step, so my clients never really take it. My clients, they kind of look.
I'll go ahead and get to this slide. This is, confirming what you guys are saying, from a multifamily market and standpoint, we are seeing that multifamily asset class is doing well. It's trending positively. There's low occupancy rates because, when people can afford it, they're gonna live there. Yes, sir.
What have you seen as trend? I mean, there's a lot of talk about kids wanting to just lock the door and go on an adventure. What are you guys seeing outside of Norcross, as far as those trends, or is that reality, or is that just somebody writing a paper that tell all about?
Yeah, I don't think that's impacting, the urban growth because people, whether or not people are transient, people are still going to flock to urban and suburban areas, especially in a place like Metro Atlanta here in region. So that's not really impacting this market, so to speak.
Well, I guess my question is are people, yeah, they say they want a single family house, but are they getting away from that because of the maintenance and the ties? It becomes a ball and chain
Oh, absolutely.
for their adventures. And are you seeing that anywhere else in Atlanta? Are you seeing it? Is that something is that trend? I guess my question is that trend really being realized, or is that just, again, somebody writing
Yes, based on that, what we've done, I can't confirm whether or not that's the case, but what you're saying, that might be the case for some people. Another example is for people downsizing, people prefer smaller urban living as well.
I think though, this is about the Livable Centers Initiative. So the stakeholders in this room, the people who are willing to come together and talk about this and are invested in this community, we can't be the answer to everybody. And just because something has a lot of demand doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for this community. And we have to figure out what our brand is, and we have to stick with that. We talked about art being an important part of our brand and wanting to attract people who are invested and interested in that. So I would just be really hesitant to say, just because there's a lot of demand for something, does that mean that's what's good for Norcross, or that's what fits with our brand, or that's what fits with what makes Norcross livable?
Sure. And that kind of feeds Catherine's argument. That feeds into the discussion we'll have later on about land use, especially along the highway corridor. Do we pick nodes along the corridor that fit at least some of that demand, that looks nice and is something that Norcross residents would be proud of, while still being able to maintain character outside of those areas? That's a conversation we also want to have as well.
I think that my comments will come when we talk about the various areas.
Okay.
Because I think I ask us to remember to remain conscious of the people who are not in the room, who are not invited to be in the room, where are many majority Hispanic, Spanish-speaking residents in cities who are not seated in these cities.
Absolutely.
And we need to be mindful of what they need in the community as residents.
Yes.
Why were they not invited?
We don't identify. We don't work hard enough to identify them, call them out, and get them to include. We include many of the same things. I love the people in this room, but these are the same people who show up and who are already serving on.
But I mean, I don't know, I'm gonna be unpopular for this, but I have to push back a little bit, because this is an open door. And there are signs everywhere. There could be all kind of people represented in this room, but they choose not to be here. So, I struggle with that. And then I don't want to pretend to know what they want. They might want a lot of single family too, because they're very entrepreneurial driven. And so they want to be able to work out of their homes and build their businesses, and they're very family driven. And so, I don't want to prescribe to know what they want either.
I'm simply going to take what I hear from them because I do talk to them and I listen to them. And so speak on their behalf.
And Russ, to your point, last time, leading to the comprehensive plan, we had a difficult time getting involved as well. So it's an ongoing challenge we want to continue to address.
But
But we-
I think it's like, you know, there's a lack of engagement, because there's a lack of knowledge. Part of that has to do with education, and part of that has to do with education on, you know, government. On
Big part of it, I'm first generation Hispanic, this country, I speak English, I learned to speak English, I had to assimilate, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. Especially around here, and what we see at the co-op. You know, when your main thing is making sure the lights are on, kids are going to school, and that they have a future that's about the kids, like my parents did for me. You're not gonna come out here, you're not, you know, so. But yeah, I mean, I'm Hispanic. I probably speak, you know, for a lot of people, especially like the ones you see at the co-op. Some of us volunteer, you know. I agree. Yeah, at the same time, I'm just saying, I have businesses and businesses have customers, and sometimes you can't cater to every single customer. So you do have to make a decision. Okay, so I want, you know, some people are gonna get upset if I charge like $5 for one empanada. At the same time, if I charge $1, I'll sell hundreds of empanadas. But you know, we kind of want to find like a happy medium to where, you know, like you're trying to attract people to the city. I think city has this big work play built into it. Which is that now the trend in the country, I think you want to kind of. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not saying you want to get rid of it. I know you're, and I appreciate that you're saying. I just want to. I'm here too, but you know.
on the spot, what brought you to the face of Norcross, that you involved in all of this, and why do you think that, you know, the community, that's a big barrier, is it a invitation?
It's a cultural and first and foremost language barrier. You know, there's a certain intimidating factor to just coming out here and sitting here. So it's just a thing. It's cultural, and it's, at the same time, hey, if I'm working like 2 jobs or working really, really hard, and I got my kids and school is back, I'm not, you know, I guess it's just, you're not gonna, you have other things to worry about. Like this isn't on top of it. If apartments come up, great. If single housing comes up, great. We're focused on paying the bills and getting our kids, you know, to get to the next level. So.
But I can understand that for the workers, and God bless them for the work they put in, but are there some leaders in the community that have kind of risen a little bit above, where they do have a little bit of time and to participate, and why have they chosen not to participate?
Yeah, I mean, I chose to participate. I don't consider myself a leader,
Well,
but, you know, I've been here since 2006, and you know, my kids are part of the community. My oldest, you know, Norcross High School, Bingfield Middle School, Simpson Elementary. So I can't, you know, it's, you know, you got, both sides have ways. Okay, you can be, I'm here. And in the co-op, we see a lot of them, and maybe it's just, like I said, whatever comes, we're gonna go with it, right? We're gonna adapt. And if it's apartments, great. You know, if it's single house, great. You know, I feel like we're blessed. There's no wrong answer, really. It's just like one would lead to success one way, one would lead to success the other way. So I kind of look at it like you can get a single family home and then work it to where you have equity in it, and a few years later, then you can go up to a bigger house, you know, or you can get housing that's a little bit more affordable, but you know, you can for kids and then they can get. I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's no wrong answer. I'm happy that we're all here and we're all having this conversation.
And
I'm curious, is there any data on income broken out by demographic?
that is available. We probably don't have it right now, but yes. And I certainly appreciate this discussion, and Luis, to your point, you know, about mojitos, when we look at the retail market, this is also something that certainly isn't separating in the city of Norcross, with very low vacancy rates. It is thriving. But then we go back to the question, between the two of these things, the multifamily market and retail market, are we seeing the types of development, the types of multifamily, the types of retail that we want to see in the city of Norcross? One thing that is lacking that we keep hearing over and over again is the grocery store. Right, so, a grocery store. So how do we attract the amount of residents in the rooftops to support a viable grocery store in Norcross? That is.
I'm sure Publix can make that city for us.
Right.
Program make that city.
No, yes, so.
They'll look and see, they're smart people.
It is interesting how on some level, I mean, I haven't gone into a lot of the Hispanic grocery stores, but there's a lot of those around the Norcross, little corner markets.
There's 3 within a mile where we're
Right.
sitting.
So it's interesting because that community has got their act together and they got their grocery stores or their corner stores and they use them.
Right.
So.
So just to begin wrapping up this discussion about the real estate analysis, we also looked into the industrial market. We looked into the
Well,
Northeast.
let's go back
industrial.
to retail. We pass that. I would say our retail vacancy rate is small because our retail is small. And we don't, the form's sitting about half empty.
The retail space.
Yeah,
Small.
there's one in Peachtree City. I'm sure if they're having this conversation, their vacancy rate's substantially higher.
Sorry, I missed that conversation.
I say Peachtree City is, Peachtree Corners, Peachtree Corners is having, their retail is not growing. Now, they've got vacant spaces all over the place, up and down. Yeah. So,
But they're also getting ready to redevelop with North American Properties taking over.
it's changing the whole scheme of things, right? They're gonna just.
Yes.
Right.
It's not gonna be status quo.
Right. So the retail market is, I think, underutilized in Norcross. We've got a vacant space downtown now.
William, do you know what our vacancy is?
The vacancy for retail, it's not bad. It's not that bad. It's probably, I want to say low single digits, not low, but mid single digits, 5, 6, 7, I want to say. Industrial, of course, is very little. Offices, not great. But yeah, retail is not, it's not doing poorly, I don't think. I think we're actually getting a lot more interest now than when I started in 2019. Just because of things like the median household income. I know there's a double-edged sword, but that is very, very good for the recruitment of newer, cool retail. So, there's opportunities that we have probably not taken full advantage of. Neighbors have been doing some really interesting, plans for redevelopment. Saying so.
I mean, we have greater selection of big shops, and restaurants.
But we do know that there's a bit of a food desert in terms of growth, living groceries in this city limits. There is a lot of it's specialty, Guadalajara, etc. So there's opportunity for that. We're working with a retail consultant now.
Yeah. The visioning survey results are all posted on the website now, where you can actually read all of it.
Any other thoughts or comments on the retail or multifamily market?
I'll share a link with you. It's on our imagineourfuture.org/participate. /resources. Where all the different documents get posted.
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Imagineourfuture.org. There's a resources page that has all of our.
All right, we're making great time. I'm gonna go ahead and skip forward. We can continue this discussion, as part of our land use discussion. As William just alluded to, the industrial market is also not struggling. The in this submarkets, which we use in Northeast industrial submarket for not just Norcross. For this analysis, there is very low vacancy, and you can see that when you go to these industrial sites throughout Norcross. However, a lot of them are light industrial, and they're in demand. When we think about industrial, we think about bigger uses that really do support the city's tax base, and that isn't quite the case for Norcross. But since they are thriving and they're full, they're employing people. People are buying things from these businesses. They're there, and it's a question of does the city facilitate reformatting of those uses, or do we welcome it and try to work with those business owners to utilize any open property they might have to facilitate housing or other businesses that complement those businesses, so things like that.
Jonathan,
Yes,
what's the date on this data?
this is 2020
Okay.
Q1. And then for the office market, it's not surprisingly is trending negatively with a higher vacancy rate, and this is attributed by continued work from home from a lot of companies, but also a lot of the office product that is in the city of Norcross is aging and or obsolete. So we see a lot of older business parks, some that have been rehabilitated and still retain their tenants, like around Pinnacle Park. I think there's one that.
And we've got Meridian over off of Jimmy Carter by the Pattendees.
Yes.
There's a lot of lower end, I would say, I wouldn't say that, but a lot of lower rent.
Sure.
Which is actually very facilitates, growing businesses, smaller businesses. So I think we're doing well in that part, but the class A type of office space is not so much, right? Exactly.
And this, the question is that something that the city wants to. So I'm going to flash this slide up on here for a couple minutes. So these are some of the key takeaways from everything we just discussed. How Norcross is experiencing growth pressure from the adjacent communities around Norcross from a population and employment standpoint. That live work imbalance that we're seeing, a lot of people flocking to the city to work, but not necessarily living here. And the other way around, people leaving the city that do live here to work. A high cost of housing, and that, like we discussed, compounds transportation and land use issues. We'll discuss some of those land use issues. But those transportation ones are obvious. It's more cars on the road, less people being able to walk to work and to retail in places they shop and spend a lot of their time. One Norcross does have a lot of that. People who live closer to the city center in downtown, they have that luxury, but not so much in the parts of the city. We have aging commercial centers and light industrial uses that may be in need of reformatting, maybe some innovative thinking around how we take advantage of those being here. And then hospitality and grocery stores and how those are lacking in the city proper. Parking is also a continued challenge. That's good. That's around the nation is a continued challenge for historic downtowns. We got feedback on that, so that's something that we'll be addressing as well. But just wanted to leave these up here. If anybody has any comments, I'm glad to take those. We'll try to move on to land use in a moment here. Yes.
When we say hospitality, it's a gap. We have 14 hotels around Norcross. And how can we say grocery stores are a gap when we have all these Hispanic grocery stores that are serving their community well?
Because Josh, 8 of those motels are operating as extended stay residents. They're not operating as traditional hospitality motel. We know that from our study.
I guess I'd just like to have a better understanding of hospitality as to what that means.
It does mean motel, but we have to acknowledge that the ones that we have aren't operating as their intended business model. So we really only have 6.
But if we, and again, not to belabor this, but I just would love to have, not at this point, of course, but debate about, well, we have them, they're being used as micro apartments, basically. There's a need in the community for that. So what's wrong with that? Obviously there's nothing wrong with that. We're fulfilling a need. I don't know.
but it still leaves a gap for hospitality. You know what I mean? Because if the city's not changing it, which y'all did the ordinance might have good reasons, but it still keeps a gap for hospitality. So we've opened the Crown Plaza, which is part of addressing that gap at the higher end. But there's still a gap in that, if you will, missing middle of hospitality when you're talking about a motel and a hotel.
So our direct competitors are technically the street corner with the Hilton and the Marriott. And we still trend 20% in occupancy behind them. Because the class A office space that's bringing in the tenants that utilize the facilities such as ours is lacking. So the three of us are competing for the same pool of business. So it's a matter of like shifting, and we're fortunate that we're new and we're nice and they're dated. So it's easier for us to pull that shift over. But again, the companies that are using us weekday are coming from Technology Park and Eastern Farms. And to your point, like with the 8 extended stay properties, that we've had challenges with code enforcement, trying to lump our property in to the same codes that they, for good reason, have in place for the extended stay properties, which in our environment, because we're a hotel, we're a restaurant, we're a conference center, it's not feasible for us to try to enforce, telling someone they can't back into a parking place. I'm not gonna go to my restaurant and tell someone to move their car. Or we have people that come in that never actually see us to even know about certain ordinances. So fortunately, the city manager is with us on like certain things. But I mean, that's a gap that, certain ordinances that need to be changed to accommodate facilities that aren't.
So if you're legal to back a car in the parking space at a hotel in Norcross,
With an extended stay, because
well, but, right, you have defined extended stay based on what he's saying.
but if you build more hotels in Norcross and you allow them to be extended stays, they would all be filled just like that, because there's a market for that. Right. So, the predators, folks who are using like the facility over there behind the Quick Trip on Jimmy Carter, they back their cars in so they can obscure the plate so that they can do their bad business. So that's why they have that rule.
So Josh, what keeps that from happening is the rents you charge. And I will say you are at a disadvantage, and I don't know if you know this.
Our predecessor.
Your predecessor was the only one who lied to us when we came to do the survey and wouldn't let us interview people. And so we listed it as an extended stay rather than, we didn't go to the hotels we knew weren't operating as extended stays. Yours was the only one that lied. And so
Well,
it
that
got
was the
put into the
previous one.
lens. In the wrong category. I apologize for that.
So that was the previous owner.
Yeah.
Like we're under new ownership, I mean, like completely gutted, rebranded,
Yeah.
like not the same.
Yeah.
And I know the police and fire can attest to that. Like they come by just to say hi now.
Yeah, but if a new motel was coming in, they would just need to set their nightly rate beyond the folks who are living in extended stays, who understand are one step above the least expensive apartments is what an extended stay is. They're slightly more expensive, which is why people can't get out of them, get into an apartment. Because they can't save up for last month's rent, hence the motel at home program. But you're not charging a nightly rate that is going to attract anybody for an extended stay period of time.
And all those previous tenants, like we had a challenge. Like we even had a challenge with them the first 6 months we were open, trying to come back. And like you're not getting $39 a night.
You're not full. You're not.
Do I?
If you're not full,
I'm not full.
then
Like our-
why do we have a gap in hospitality if we can't fill the one we've got now? And you're not the only one, you got another one down the street from you.
I want to clarify that this gap in hospitality, maybe it isn't pointing to what the demand is right now, but what the demand might need to be if the city were to attract the type of office that you want to see to attract the jobs that might support that type of use, or even rooftops, because rooftops also impact, hotels as well, for weddings, events and things like that. So there's the perceived gap is what we're talking about there is when we think about the mixed use that currently exists in the city and what you might want that to be. So you're right in that assumption. There isn't a major gap right now, but for future development, if we want to consider that.
So I don't think that Norcross is a tourist attraction, and I don't see us building. You know, I don't know if that's what we want. If so, I think there's, we shift our conversation. But I don't, and anybody can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but.
Are you talking about hospitality in term?
About like attracting tourism so that there is a for that.
But we create our own. Like for example, we have really captured the market on the international wedding market. So when you like see us on the weekends, a lot of that business that you see from us is business that are having their event inside our homes. So like when I say like we generate our own tourism by renting our homes. And you may have some that have weddings at the atrium or car house or but I mean that's not generating as much as.
So if our development isn't focused on attracting more tourists, we need to focus on more hospitality. That's the question.
So what I think about work is we have had, entity reach out to us about perhaps putting an India history museum in the city of Norcross, which could potentially be a significant tourism draw because there is not a museum like it anywhere in the world. And they are looking to try to find a support. So that would be a potential development that would impact this gap and increase the gap.
Absolutely.
And this area has a huge Southeast Asian.
Hence why they're looking at Norcross.
But say we weren't even considering tourists, there are other factors to consider when thinking about hotels. And again, there's something else that where we might cross that bridge when we get there, but really thinking ahead about that hotel demand. When we're thinking about the land uses that we want to see in the city. We want to move ahead because we only have a little less than an hour to discuss land use. So I'll give everybody a couple minutes. I know some of you have been flipping through the document, the handout you have in front of you. But again, the handout does contain character areas that were previously adopted in the plan that was adopted in 2018. So if you want to flip through that, we'll go through some of the major ones where there are common themes that we've heard from the community. And we'll go through a couple that you will call out tonight as well. So if you see more in there as we're going through, feel free to ask questions right now, or we can discuss them as we go. So I'll give you a couple minutes for that. Some individual time, feel free to discuss them yourself as well.
What is feet height to stories? What's that? Because I keep seeing feet height in all of these for the buildings, but I'm trying to figure out how many stories that. And 35, 60, and 72, I think were the three numbers I was seeing.
Andrews.
15 feet total.
Yeah.
15 feet per foot.
So feel free to keep flipping through that. As we begin our land use discussion, just wanted to give you a quick overview of character areas. What you're reading through these, you see some text on vision and some of the policies and implementation measures that were put into place the last time we went through this process. But just a quick overview, character areas are sub areas of the ornament. That, share common characteristics and just general character from a use standpoint, as well as building types and what you see as far as the transportation network, the roads, the trails that you see in those areas. We also, when we establish these, we also expect them to kind of grow at the same rate. It needs to be similar all along the way. So since the last comprehensive plan update, there weren't a lot of changes to the character areas. Most of them remain the same, but some boundaries shifted. And that might be the case here as well. So we might hear from you today about some potential boundary shifts that might need to happen based on these policies. Yes, Jim.
Norcross, the big Norcross way, 3 square miles, 4 square miles.
6.
We've got 14 character areas in 6 square miles. I mean, what's the difference between 6 Beaufort Highway, Jimmy Carter, and 11 Jimmy Carter? Do those necessarily need to be 2 separate? And then you get into 10, which is generally the same because it's an old industrial area. Then 5 kind of pokes out the Jimmy Carter. Should 1, 6, and 11 be combined across the Jimmy Carter frontage? Clip the corner of 5. I mean, because eventually, South Petrie is going to get closed, and or they're going to extend the median, so that'll become a little bit more of an island. So I guess I wonder why the city of their size needs to be sliced and diced in so many different little areas.
6 is a little bit different than 11, and 1 and 11 are very, very similar.
Yeah.
6 is a little different in data. It's got the park, it's got the retail up there.
Park across the street.
Yeah, and that's why we want to talk about tonight. When you read through them, you might see some similar implementation policies. But innately, these areas are different. If you split your car and drive through all of these, they are different. And these categories were established probably 10 years ago now, and in the last comprehensive plan process, people generally want to keep them the same. So that just is the outcome of the last process. That may not be the case this time, Jim, but we want to have that discussion tonight.
Next week.
So this, what we're looking at, this language is what is currently published.
Yes.
Okay, none of this is revisions you may already.
No revisions to the grade. So like you said, we have 13 character areas. Yes, for quite a small city. But like I said, if you were to drive to the city, they are different. But do we want to see them be more alike? That is a major question. Should 6 and 11 be similar? I don't even know if that's possible because of the industrial nature of 11, but that's something we want.
6 and 7.
Well, but 11 is to a certain extent, it's as much retail as it is industrial. Everything along Jimmy Carter is retail, and that extending up further up toward Beaufort Highway, is that necessarily a bad thing?
No, that's a good point.
I mean, and again, this is what's happening next week, not what's happening today. But again, if you're in the back, you've got, and you're all office. I mean, you're in the 100% office, and right. So that whole 11 is really more retail office than there is some warehouse. You're building a new one there on Norcross, but if you look at what the tenants are doing in 11, it's virtually identical to what they're doing in 1 and what they maybe should be doing in 6.
So 6 to me has extended stay hotel for 11. I don't know where does that?
Well,
extended stay sit?
Some of these are more nuanced, so, like obviously 4 is gonna be residential. And so,
Yeah, no, I'm specifically, me, I'm in the beat. So the distinction between 6 and 11 is that isn't the extended stay on Jimmy Carter?
probably,
No, it's on the right side.
And again, you're focusing on today. Could be next week or next month.
Right.
So
Focusing on it.
do we want to keep the extended stay there? Or do we want to try to somehow create a character area that begins to slowly push them out.
As we've talked about in the Norcross Development Authority meetings, when we're looking at
Yes,
trying to
ma'am.
put in more dense housing and mixed developments, you know, with housing and business. 6 is one of the character areas where we're looking to do something like that, a mixed development. And so I would like the comprehensive plan to therefore allow for dense housing in a place that is also going to allow retail storefronts or an incubator or something like that. But if we're lumping it in with 11, which doesn't even have an extended stay and has no residents in it, then we're taking out the possibility of doing that without having to come to get a variance to the comp plan, which only happens here, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking in those specific.
Yeah, okay, so we will get to that. Let me go over a couple slides really quick, and we're gonna do a deep dive on 6, 7, and 8 as well. So that might be a discussion about, you know, whether or not 6, 11 lumps into 6. Yeah.
Just real quick, there's some boundary issues between 1 and 5 and 2 and 4. At what point could we talk about those?
Yeah, we can get to those as well. We'll discuss, let's discuss Buford Highway first, and we'll get to Atlantic PIB and then the 2 and 4 that you mentioned. And another one I noticed was 12, which is the South Norcross neighborhoods along Mitchell Street or Mitchell Road. And we'll get to those. But just really quickly, I wanted to flash this map up here. I know the labels are small, but they're not important. We can send this out to you so you can see them. But generally, this map is showing some areas of change, recent development that has occurred in the city over the past 5 years since the last comprehensive plan was adopted. You know, the trends show that a lot of this development happened along the highway corridor near downtown Norcross. While there is one development at the gateway in the Atlantic PIB or Peachtree Industrial Boulevard character area, it was a major development because, you know, nothing really happened there for a while after the gas station. And what else is there? Yeah, a Zaxby's, and isn't there a boarding facility too?
Yeah,
There's grooming, there's a-
Yeah.
And there's a Japanese.
Yes. So after this has happened, you know, what else does that catalyze? Just to report the question there. We also look into the gateways. This map is from the previous comprehensive plan. And when we talk about gateways, we're thinking about physical aspects that welcome residents and visitors into the city. Things that you know, Norcross residents can be proud of, whether that's developments, monuments, signs, just the general look and feel of the corridors within the city, including Buford Highway, which we'll get into in a moment. So this is a previous map that shows some conceptual gateways, but as well as existing gateways. So we want to revisit this to think about, you know, what that looks like for the future, including the Atlantic. This is the map I was talking about for 30 seconds, including the Atlantic PIB gateway that's up here. So we can go ahead and dive into one, and this might include discussion of several character areas. So I'm actually going to include that. If anybody wants to come up and point at the map, you're welcome to. I know sometimes it's easier just to point out what you're talking about. So for character area 1, the Atlantic Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, this was previous. We bring this up because of the gateway development that happened with the apartments that were built recently. Generally, when things like that happen, new development clusters around things that recently happened. And you know, with the nature of this area up here, there is potential for, you know, other developers or property owners to come in and want to build something that complements that. So it's up to this committee and to the city to establish what that vision is in this plan. So if you turn to page 16 in your handout, that shows some of the vision that was established. Just looking through this, just wanted to hear anything you had to say, whether it's about the boundaries, the uses that are allowed, anything like that, Kathleen.
A question about the big apartment complex that went up on Union Carter. Does it have good pedestrian access to Stripling Elementary? Is it just down Jimmy Carter and up Atlantic, or is any back walkway put in?
That's his part.
There is no sidewalk. There's no, yeah, but when it's gonna make the project, like, big sidewalk there. From, that, racetrack down to Atlantic.
Okay, if I think of the lit LCI that we're also supposed to be working on, is there any pathway possibility for putting in a path? That if that's part of the work we're supposed to be doing here, it's not just the comp plan, but the LCI study step, are the assemblages of properties that would be required, is there any potentiality for an LCI project to have a path that's not down Jimmy Carter, which I wouldn't have an elementary kid walking on, or which I wouldn't have an elementary kid walking, to give you what 10 years ago said was required, or, a goal.
And also just to clarify, not for this LCI, right? This is not in the boundaries of the LCI.
We also have the downtown LCI, right?
Yes. But to your point, yes,
Okay.
those connections are needed. That can be a part of this too.
I'm not seeing it right now. so
Yeah,
I wonder
good.
what that would be.
They'll let you put in a. I'm just- Okay,
Yes.
Okay, I think that the boundary on Langford is strong because there's residential. It has the boundary going all the way to Langford, but there's residential, there's people living on Langford on the other side and down Langford Court, which is that little funny V, white V. And so all of that area, yeah, all of that really shouldn't be included, in my opinion, this character area, because it's part of the Langford community, not residential.
So you think it should be part of five?
It should be part of 5.
Should it? Maybe next week, should it be?
Yeah, because that's the community that's connected to, cultivation, cultivation isn't part of Jimmy Carter and Pacific and beyond, take for instance, our family property that's all in there. I don't think that gets lumped into that character area. It's more relevant to Langford than it is to this.
But if you connect it to, what is that, connected 5?
You can't connect to Peterson Woods.
Football would be more neighborhood oriented.
Yeah, but if you connect to the 5, then all of a sudden becomes some kind of residential.
So that's more appropriate for that area than business, really.
Don't you see the houses on that side of Langford one day becoming townhomes or something? If somebody puts together some lots there, then, it goes down and gets picked up the deed, backing up to the.
5 already has medium density in it, so, it ties into 5 better.
Okay.
If you were to pull up the aerial, I see what you're saying, Doug, you would
Right.
see kind of where the delineation of industrial really stops.
Right.
But it doesn't in the character area that's shown.
It goes on that side of Peterson,
Yeah.
but it doesn't go up to.
Do you mind drawing boundary thoughts on the letter?
But I don't know if you could do granularity on that.
No, yeah, but generally it's fine. And we'll do it in RTI. Somebody can send it out. Any thoughts on this idea or other thoughts about character area 1? Oh, no.
You gotta think about the elementary school, Gwinnett intentionally built. They quit building neighborhood schools. And they intentionally built them in industrial areas. When they no longer need the school, they'd be able to sell the school building, which DeKalb can't do. Because DeKalb spent all their money building the neighborhoods. Now there's this building sitting in the neighborhood. So Gwinnett County School Board's vision, this is what you get. You get an elementary school stuck in the middle of a industrial. That tends to defeat the purpose of walking it from anybody. You can't really focus on the elementary schools being a part of that deal because of the way Gwinnett go to school.
So what I noticed is that this area really doesn't talk about residential. It doesn't talk about the what it is allowed, it's sort of not mentioned. But there is an elementary school there and a new large apartment complex has come in. So should there be language to say what is part of that character area in terms of residents? And should it say multifamily housing or, you know, it's just odd that it's one of the few places that all it says is that any residential use should have good pedestrian access to Ripley Elementary. It doesn't say
Go,
anything
I think
else.
the land use at the end of the chart.
Yeah, page
does
38.
relate to that a little bit in terms of what uses are allowed and or,
Okay, I'm just saying it's one of the, where the little write-up.
but it's not called out.
Yeah, it doesn't call anything out. but
Yeah, low density, medium and high.
Okay.
You, page 38.
Do you see any general uses on this table for character area one that should be included that aren't currently included?
Well, the uses, the residential, they're actually not, they're in the light square.
Yeah.
Which means that. Can you go back to the.
Well, it says details included in character area description, but it's not. It just says what the height is, that anything residential should have. setback, But it doesn't otherwise describe residential.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to we can certainly include working detail. I think that's the.
Well,
The,
yeah,
the only, I think
yeah.
that the intent behind that is to leave this flexible enough so that the zoning code could handle that, if that makes sense.
Well, then I fill in the square, fill in the box on the table, or add a description in the, do one or the other, but it's misleading.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on character area one?
We gotta hurry, what do we do for 12 areas?
But we're not gonna do all 13. We won't get there, but if after this meeting or something we don't cover, please feel free to email us and we have a conversation. But we're gonna move on now to Buford Highway. So there's 3 character areas along Buford Highway I want to discuss because this feeds into the LCI, but also is something that came up a lot when talking to stakeholders and to the public. So this map here shows general intersections along the highway and the walk times between them. Generally, they range from 5 to 10 minutes, which is pretty walkable. But would you walk along your highway right now? Probably not in this comfortable. No. But when thinking about potential redevelopment and infill that happens along the highway, we want to think about what types of development that happens like. And a couple of years ago, the city of Norcross did conduct a highway master plan, but we want to spend a little bit of time talking about, does the vision that was established in that plan still apply? And Kathleen, you mentioned this earlier, that Jimmy Carter node, but I kind of wanted to just get your feedback on that plan. Can you raise your hand if you're familiar with that plan? Only a couple of you.
I'm sorry, which,
The Buford Highway Master Plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about Jimmy Carter.
Oh, I made it, I'm sorry. For Buford Highway. So I included this map on here because in the Buford Highway Master Plan, these were the 3 nodes that were identified as priority development nodes. And there was even conceptual concepts, that were created by the firm that did that. And the city, subsequently adopted that plan. But what I want to hear today is, is that plan still reflective of what the city wants? And I included some imagery here from that plan. Some things that Norcross residents liked about other communities, Buford Highway and Chamblee, the things that they're doing there, people tend to like. Downtown Swanee and downtown Lawrenceville. Peachtree Corners is on here. That is not something that was in the plan. I did include that knowing that, that's probably a little contentious, but, is something like that something people want to see? And so I just want to get your feedback here. Want to open the floor for discussion about Buford Highway, and we could talk about all 3 nodes, but let's start with Jimmy Carter, the Jimmy Carter node.
the Jimmy Carter node is very, very definitely affected by the median in place on Jimmy Carter. You cannot turn left from Buford Highway all the way. You gotta come all the way down a mile before you turn left. You gotta make a U-turn and go back up. That struggle with all those businesses that failed and been redone a couple of times because of the median. So it's a difficult fix when you can't turn left into the place and you can't turn left.
Is that a county road?
State
State highway.
both are state.
So among the,
You travels US
Well,
among the Norcross Development Authority 3 and 5 year goals are assemblages for mixed use properties. And that node is within the Buford Highway Master Plan where we are focusing our interest because we consider the downtown node to be gym and the DD's play space. And there's just not a whole lot of the time.
No, you're not.
No, hands off me, I'm not touching it. So there may be some opportunities for us on that Beaver Ruin node, but we really stand away on the DDA because that's their footprint. And so our footprint bring all the rest of them, 6 miles, including theirs, but we'll play out at the other 2 nodes. So especially down there at Jimmy Carter, there's potential for stuff there.
Sure.
So I would want anything in the comp plan to allow for mixed use development, which includes retail, office, and housing.
Basically things that are in that.
Because that's what we use to help put our goals together.
And to revisit, Jim, your comment earlier about potentially combining character area 6, the Buford Highway, Jimmy Carter Activity Center with 6, or was it 11? 11, do we want to revisit that, or is that?
And Kathleen, to your point, if the comp plan currently does allow, but you're saying like.
I just don't want to not allow it. And to me, it doesn't matter if you connect 6 to the tip of 5 and all of 1. That doesn't matter to me because I'm citywide. But when we're talking about the Buford Highway Master Plan along Buford Highway, that's what we have to hear about.
Okay. So any thoughts on expanding this node? Because this in the diagram that's in the Buford Highway Master Plan, this node sort of goes all the way down to the south. Where is that easement? Is it
That's the power lines right there.
right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a little bit of a barrier between this character area and character area 11. But just to revisit that discussion, is there any more desire to loop character area 11 into 6? Does that make sense? But still allowing for mixed use development.
I think 11 is pretty built out. It's built out with retail on the street side, office and industrial in the back.
So, but it's not significantly built out any differently than 6. So you could combine the two as long as you're still allowing for mixed.
Well, depending on how far down you come down to Jimmy Carter 6, if you come down to where down here, right here. And you could, this is all single frontage in Colorado. This is where you can turn in, you turn out with. This is all, front is retail, back is all industrial. Where my office at. So if you were to drag 6 down here and pick up more of this crummy retail that's right through that Brewster's and Mexican restaurant that we get all the time.
Let's try.
Yep. Just a reminder, we are looking, this map looks ahead to the future and not what's currently on the ground now.
Right.
And in the character area 11, if you do flip to page 33, in the previous plan update, this area called for high density and mixed use to serve as a regional attraction for Shawnee Living Center. So does that speak to what is called for in this Jimmy Carter note I'm talking about as well?
So 11 has a much shorter building height. Would be a concern if you're trying to do a mixed.
Okay, and to that point, is that something that could be increased without raising too many red flags throughout the day?
There is no way where applicants could set area. I would probably not do a variance, I just delay the process by at least sometimes 6 months or more.
They started variances that could be granted up to 10 feet, which is, that review without it.
Yeah, but
That's not-
10 feet takes it to 45 feet, which is based on the 15 feet, that's 3 stories.
Yeah.
You know, they need to be at least 5 or 6 stories tall if you're gonna do a true mixed use.
Yeah.
Retail under
That would be
residential.
something you guys want to change that.
It needs to approach 60 or 70 feet tall, which again, along Jimmy Carter is not necessarily a bad thing.
I will,
So 6 allows 72 feet, but 11 only allows 35 feet. So I would ask that if you're finding the 2 that you should provide 6.
the higher one.
Yeah.
I will say, I do think looking back that lower height limit was set in this character area because it says about with the neighborhoods, the single family neighborhoods to the east. That's something you want to continue to
Well,
consider.
I also think too, Northville is not going anywhere. Let's be realistic. Yeah, a lot of this is a realistic, actually, the realistic thing too, because what's going to change potentially is going to be the properties that front Jimmy Carter. When you make that turn, the retail there. I don't think that this is speaking to the 90% of land, right? You know, so I do think
Well,
that there's.
And the stuff that's on Norcross Tucker is just now finishing getting built out. So it's
Right.
brand new. They're unlikely to be tearing that down to do anything else with it.
Correct. And if you notice in the map, that's actually part of the other character, number 12. The frontage on North.
Yeah.
So I just think that the dynamic changes, what we're looking at, I think it's really gonna be affecting the frontage, which I think, to your point, would help. That's and Jim, to your point about it being the right height, not that left.
Yeah.
But I do think that's in line with.
And we slow down the development, try to get.
So should we splice 11 so that the part that abuts Jimmy Carter Boulevard directly is a part of character area 6, or should we leave character area 11 alone?
You know, what my input would be that I think 6 goes too far towards railroad tracks, and we have a lot of area down there that could be an extension of our downtown, but it could be character area 7 continues down on the other side of Beaufort Highway, at least on the back side that goes along South Peachtree Street. So if we were going to extend 6 down to 11, you know, frankly, I'd like to see this, but there was a lot of historic homes that were taken down on that back side along the railroad tracks, that's where the temple is. And so really 7 ought to reach down into there, and then I can see 6 pushing down.
So what stakes in 6 is what's fronting to Beaufort Highway. Behind that,
Right.
those properties, that should be part of 7 coming down, and then 6 continues into 11.
Just like, well,
But I could see this plan, taking 11 and putting 72-foot buildings in there right across the street from Bay McFarland subdivision might not be well received, so.
Yeah.
You know,
I threw that on here, but the people didn't really agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That makes sense. You know, driving on South Beach Street is so quaint, nice trees and everything. Maybe that's not necessarily in line with, right?
Yeah, and then the fact that 11 doesn't include what's actually facing Norcross Tucker, except when it gets down to the Montessori school, is fine.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You
You got a
know,
little bit of.
Now I want to see the difference in those two quarters, but yeah, so we can make 6 and 11, combine them. And just put the items.
We're all on the same page there. Thoughts?
Well, the problem you run into is the problem we've had all along, and that's, we go back to why is Chamblee what it is because there's large single owned tracts that were bought and redeveloped. To put together something in character area 6 between Buford Highway and the railroad tracks, you're gonna have to piece together 4, 5, or 6 different parcels. A number of them will be fronting on South Peachtree to get an area that's large enough to do something that is of what you're talking about. So, to just look at the properties that are fronting on Buford Highway, they're not deep enough to do that type of development. They're gonna need to begin to pick up all or part of the property that's going up the hill, which is now vacant and or developed as.
There's a whole extended stay on that side of Buford Highway right there. So I mean, I would say that there is room to put stuff together.
I mean, frankly, we were thinking on the south side of Beaver Highway anyway, but there could be an assemblage on the north side, and I just think in our mind, we were.
You're talking about-
contemplating this house.
I mean, what right is that corner right there with the Dollar General or whatever it is? That's.
Exactly,
that's
exactly.
perfect. That's fingers.
Okay, in the interest of time, we're gonna keep going. But we're gonna take all this into consideration and maybe look at those parcel sizes. Assemblage is an issue across the board, so we won't rule that out as something that's going to prevent any of this. I want to move to town center. This is the character area 7. That's gonna be on page 28 of your handout. We just kind of started jumping into this, thinking about pulling some of 6 into 7, but this is the town center. This is celebrating the historic charm of downtown Norcross and extending that into what is not currently built, in that character. So things along the highway don't necessarily look like that right now. If redevelopment were to occur, this character area would enforce that idea of the historic charm that is currently established in downtown Norcross. So are there other areas that we should include in this, other than that northern part of 6? Are there areas we should take away? Yes.
So I advocate for removing the properties that are on Price Place and having the line be behind those properties. Because because it's right across from the school, and if you allow some multifamily housing there, it is distinctly different from the rest of the character area on the other side of Beaufort Highway, on the north side of Beaufort Highway.
But the properties that are along the highway should stay.
Yeah, well, so I defer to others on that. On Summer Hour, just off of Beaufort Highway, where the word summer is, are a bunch of townhouses. Then there's just a very few single-family residences across from Summer Hour Middle School, that I would put into the Summer Hour. And then I defer to others what they want to do with townhouses and the actual buildings on Beaufort Highway that are the rest of the towns.
Thoughts there?
I think that makes sense, especially if we're all good about extension that we're talking about, because looking at this, I realize we don't even have Carlisle House at the town center, and it should absolutely be in it. So, if we extended midway down Lively towards Beaufort Highway and then down off the map, like we've already talked about, I think that's appropriate.
Carlisle has to. Corner
on that.
Carlisle and Peachtree.
Not Carlisle, I'm sorry, what's the other one?
Flint Hill.
Sorry, Flint Hill. There after that.
Let me capture your comment, please. Over. Basically.
So, going back to the comment about Price Place, I mean, if you look at the reality of it, there's 3 parking lots and a substation on this side. So, none of those are going to get redeveloped because they're all owned by either Georgia Power or the school board. So there's really not an opportunity. I guess there are a couple houses as you go further down. But, for the most part, that stretch. Yeah.
So the summer hour one is number on the summer, one, that's mine. So I want to see what it allows. It allows a variety of residential housing options are allowed. Does it allow multifamily? The summer hour doesn't say.
I see in the chart on the page 38.
Yeah, it looks like it does.
Yeah.
Okay. Good, that's why I have to make it part of that.
I would actually think about propose extending 7 further north. Because we had that challenge when those apartments that are, they're moving right now, behind the Boys and Girls Club. You notice we have 3 character areas that come to a point, number 7, 8, which is industrial, and 9, which makes it very difficult to redevelop cohesive
Yeah.
without having to do all kinds of variances, this and that. And I think I mentioned this before, Jonathan, that you should think strongly about having nodes, or I don't want to say overlay, but in those areas that make sense for higher density, let's allow that. And that might be a different conversation.
Yeah.
No, this is,
Boundaries, but-
you're right, you're right to bring that up. And I also want to acknowledge that too, because in the Beaufort Highway Master Plan, they call out the intersection of Beaufort Highway and Beaver River Road as a node, still part of the town center. But so do we acknowledge that as its own character area, or do we extend this north, like you say? Should it retain the character of downtown Norcross, or should it be a little more higher density? Something that reflects.
The market would say higher density because of just traffic counts that you see around these important intersections that are conducive to higher development. Sure. I think right now we don't allow for that easily. Okay. We probably could accommodate.
I'm gonna pull out the slide for character area 8 because looking at the Langford Road Industrial Center, we want to consider this too. So do we pull this into that same node, or does this remain as a character area? So we put together at character area 8 on page 30.
I would keep it distinct from 7, but and I think it's different than 9. I think a slight expansion of 9, but then, you know, so where you have blue, it's really purple. That part of 7 becomes part of 9. But 8 is its own 7.
This is where we have to hit up the as well.
Right.
60% of the property is going to be rental multifamily. Because right now there's a big development.
Yeah, but that's
So-
very different. So, you're not. That's what we want to do, you know, that's getting into our single family residences around Norcross.
I hate for our conversation to be so focused on multifamily when out of our 425 respondents, they rate apartments as the least desirable thing that they want to see in housing.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Josh, is that 7 is single family, and I don't think we should be making a change that risks that
Yeah,
nature
okay.
of single family.
I hate to recommend an extra character area, but the Beaver Road. Highway to-
It's very small in what's, and it is. The corner behind. Where you curve behind the market. That is then resident. Single family residential, and I don't think we want to change that, we don't. To bring it into this, I don't think we want to do that with that, so we're kind of actually better. Nobody's actually building in the intersection, and there are different things that are appropriate for those other great ones.
I think you just take, is it 9 that's behind 7, the school then?
Yeah.
I think you just take that and you continue that down Beaver Ruin all the way to Beaver Highway, and then that encompasses. But I mean, I don't know, because there's a bunch of single family down along the power lines there, but you've got apartments that are just now being built that are gonna be there for 30, 40 years, so I don't know how you loop those into 9.
Is there a way to, without making it a single character, is there a way to allow for in what we would consider important intersection development? Is there a way to allow for more denser in the comprehensive plan.
You mean combining, I'm sorry, John,
I just-
help me understand what John's saying. John, are you saying combine 9 and 12?
No, I'm saying,
Because 10's very different than 9 or 12. 9 and 12 are more.
saying maybe 9 should continue down and circle all this to include where these apartments are being built.
And then is the other side of.
You leave
That's
8,
pretty different.
leave all the rest of 8 alone. You just,
Okay.
you just bring 9 down into here.
That accomplishes what I was saying.
Okay.
Allowing those corners.
Okay,
To
so it's not its own, it's just part of.
Right. That's hard to build anyways, because those giant apartments were just built, they're gonna be there a long time. So
Yeah.
might as well have them.
Yeah, okay.
This sounds being very common. Why is 7 not extended down to 10?
And also has more industrial feel to it. There's a lot of auto uses that go down as well. That, I don't know how to say this, that aren't really going anywhere.
The aerial, it's very like single story.
But won't that change?
The,
Isn't that
the
the
power
NDA?
lines go through there. I don't think there, and there's a lot of wetlands. There's just not a lot of.
It's a height constraint. on development streets
Yeah.
there.
A lot of landscaping coming back there.
And that was conceived as a way to put more.
Yeah, it just.
But it seems like all that residential, all those neighborhoods and parts of 12 is gonna eventually be part of downtown. Especially.
Yeah,
with
but it is this weird little, you drive around there,
Very great.
it seems to me less likely to get overtaken by any residents or
Apartment.
higher guest use or whatever Williams phrase is for.
Where would be the, like, more green space with the undevelopable areas, right?
Yeah, I mean, and so I think part of the green, the pathway, the green space,
Oh, that's in 7.
yeah, that's supposed to come up through 12 into 10 into 7. So there are things that are happening there, they're just not construction, you know.
Before we move on, I don't
No, go
know.
ahead.
I just noticed that for town center, under implementation, is just continue to assess the need for structured parking. And it's like, that's like broken
Yeah,
record.
for 10 years.
Right? So it's like, I was under the impression that when the police department moved, that could have been used as a great place to build apartment deck, because you can have plenty of EV charging for everybody. So I don't know why that's not on there. Just saying.
Noted.
I mean, parking deck, old police department, you know, right here, downtown corridor. I don't know, it's a win. EV charging station, I don't know how tall you can make it, that's up to you, obviously, you guys, but I think that would, you know, we can stop doing studies over decades and, you know, take the next step, like turn the page. Is that something that can be, you know, instead of continue to assess, we just decide, just do it.
I think the city is taking a good first step, right, at establishing parking downtown. Am I wrong? Am I right?
That's correct. There's been some movement on that.
Yeah.
We'll see how it.
So that's one, that's progress, I think, and you're right to call that out. We can note that, talk to our transportation for this expert as well. I want to move on to the Mitchell Street neighborhoods. We've got a few dots on here, and Lauren, you called out, you know, why are 10 and 12 together? We've kind of had a discussion. Does it make sense that they're not together, or?
But I mean, do we not want to change the use around 10? I know it's not easy, but as our downtown expands in parts of 12, but the new part of downtown, like I would love to see, sorry, but it was just those shops, those automotive and industrial spaces become something else.
So history, the reason why I've been told that can exist is the black around is because that was an area to put a lot of things that will be pushed out elsewhere and just kind of put everything there. However, to your point, not so sure land use wise, that's the best place in the middle of what it could potentially be.
So, the reality of it is, if you look at 10, everything from Paramount south of the old Norcross is the substation, go to power, with all that. You go a little bit further north of there, you've got the cemetery field, you've got Norcross Public Works. You know, you've got a whole kind of litany of long-term, very long-term uses that are kind of clustered in that area that is very difficult to overcome.
And that's where the auto, like the mechanic,
Yeah, if you look at the aerial, you'll see all of those.
I can just say,
We've
we
got-
were trying to redo that old mechanic building in the south end for it. And it was an engine repair thing, and we were like, even until those soil test results came back. And now it's like 2 years. You know, so, or, I mean, we're well into the 3 years, but we would have been open by now, or we would have been much further along. And that's because there was a lot of crap on the ground that's being remediated, which I'm very happy to do, but that might be very difficult.
It's even harder to do residential on.
I can't imagine. No bank will.
How about not even maybe we can put land uses aside, how about just connectivity? Because when we look at
Yeah.
character area 7 and 12, they're so disconnected. You know, Mitchell Road can only do so much, and there is the plan, right, to implement a trail on right along Mitchell Road. So that helps a little bit, but you know, we do have this gap.
One of the things,
I think maybe that's what you're saying, but. I mean, it's hard to make these neighborhoods nice when you're within that industrial.
And you know, these are all steps too with just the cul-de-sacs and
yeah, so it's getting into 10 is difficult.
Mhm.
You know, there's not many ways into 10. And it's a lot of not terribly desirable real estate, you know, to do much of anything.
There's a ton of connectivity planned for 12 with the Beaver Run Creek Greenway.
Oh, yeah, 12 is different, I'm saying than 10. And I have a question about 12. It doesn't say anything about, let me look in the grid. Does 12 allow for, something like a supermarket or something? There's a property that the city owns on Mitchell Road, in the gas station between that and the Orthodox Church, that was going to be an affordable housing development. The city had an intergovernmental program with Norcross development authority. The developer had to back out. So we're looking at other things to do with it.
see how big of a parcel it is.
About 10 acres.
Not all of which is buildable.
So
Well, it doesn't allow for it right now, because it looks like
Does it?
community level commercial office less than 50,000 is not currently allowed.
should we add that? Because it's not like there's anywhere else, anything else could go, so no one can just go in and build something undesirable, like, you know. You run the risk of having. But no, yeah. Big risk to fit that.
Why does 12 allow high density residential when this is actually a great place for a very affordable single family? Don't we want to protect that single family from high density residential? I mean, I can see it maybe along Mitchell, there's been talk about it along Mitchell, but
It's a good point. People are.
The city NDA signed an IPA with the NDA for high density on that property. The city was supportive of that. If the gas station, and the gas station is the only other business until you get down to the site,
which isn't
Yeah,
included in this area.
which is slightly, oh, you're right, so that's it. So that's the only business that I can think of on Mitchell Road in 12.
Do you mind marking where it is? While you're doing that, I'm gonna go ahead. Hey, everybody, we're coming up on time, like right now. I'm gonna just wrap up our discussion. We've taken all of your notes and.
Wait, what about 13? Real quick,
Okay, go ahead.
because I put that in, that thought. The co-op, talking about the Hispanic community, and speaking out for them, the co-op is right there, and they're not gonna go anywhere because they own their building. It's not like they're leasing and then maybe they're gone in a few years, so. They're going in there, they're doing a great job, they're helping out the Hispanic community specifically. And there's just no access, but it's right next to one of our parks. So I really, really would like to it would really, we are really doing a great job helping people in that co-op, right there on 13. Yep. Pinnacle Park is right there. There's currently no public transportation. And so we're in the co-op, they're handing people 40 pounds of canned goods and God willing, soon enough, we'll be doing, actual like chicken, protein. No one is gonna walk from Buford Highway or down Mitchell or, no one can get in and out. And that's a community we're really trying to help, it's the ones that don't have that. So can we at least have transportation, maybe not every day, but if the city just has it to their own park, which is literally like right there on Pinnacle, you can solve a lot of problems and help the Hispanic community. If you can just at least give them access to the co-op.
Is that an LCI project potential? Is that the kind of thing that could be an LCI project?
No, but it could go in.
Well, it's already there on the vision. New transit stops, help generate blah, 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 blah. But if you can make one of the stops on Pinnacle Park at least, it's like 100 feet away from the co-op. And then we have solved so many problems in this one little detail. Because I know that the co-op has been trying to get it done through state, county, and it's impossible. And then there's a lot of liability issues, but if I can go in here, we can just, hey, let's go to Pinnacle Park, it's Norcross Park. You can just tell people, hey, just go to the Pinnacle Park stop.
Sure.
By the way, Peachtree Corners, if you go to Jones Bridge Park on Sunday, I invite you to just hang out there. It's filled with the Hispanic community, and they pack the place. And I see that for Pinnacle Park. Like that could be another, and they're right there anyway. So anyway, I just
No, yeah, thank you. Do you mind emailing me and Ainsley and Jim? You have our emails, right? Just so we can take.
Already.
I want to be respectful of this time. But
Last comment on the comprehensive plan of zoning and whatnot, the character areas. I do think that, I don't think it would hurt to potentially allow higher intensity of uses in an area like character area 10. Yes, maybe it's not gonna necessarily, maybe it won't happen as you envision it, but I think to allow more would be the spirit of what we're talking about, like Lauren was saying. I think I do agree with that. I think we think about that forward.
So we weren't actually going to get into a discussion about implementation. I was going to just give a quick update, but to respect your time, we will leave this out for now. We can send these out. But just so you know, our team is working on some of the stuff they talked about last time in terms of transportation, the bike related projects and the pedestrian and trail projects that were part of the previous plans, and implementing those and prioritizing those as well into the community program. So we talk about implementation next time. We'll have more detail on these. And same for EV charging implementation, based on some of the input we heard from the public. We'll also be looking into these and potential requirements around those, or around EV charging. Just for next steps, we'll be having our next meeting on October 10th. I know I said this is the first time you've seen my face, and it might be the last because me and my wife are having a baby, so I might be gone around this time, but Jim will certainly be back and we'll be in good hands again. But again, we won't be until January for our final meeting about the comprehensive plan draft, which we will have to do then. So again, public engagement dates are on here. Y'all have any questions, please feel free to email us. We appreciate your attention and your conversation tonight. Thank you.
August 22nd curriculum.